Hey guys, welcome to episode 3 of Optimal Function. I'm Dr. Craig Banks. I'm here with Dr. Jim Morgenstern. Welcome.
Welcome, guys.
We have a great guest today. His name is Danny Vega. He's a native of Miami, Florida. He had received his bachelor's degree in political science from Columbia University in 2004. He played football, was a 3 times Dean List recipient. He got his master's of science in human performance at the University of Florida. He worked with the national championship men's basketball team and the tennis and golf teams as well. He also went on to do a strength and conditioning coordinator job at VCU with basketball. He helped the Rams become the 2007 conference champions, and they also made it to the second round of the NCAA tournament. He's been a power lifter. He does raw power lifters. He's had a 640 squat, 400 bench, and a 700 deadlift. He's done indoor rowing. He's had personal bests of 1 point, or I guess that's an hour,
minute 19.
minute 19.9 in the 500 meter, which is insane, and 14.5 in the 100 meter, 389 meters in the minute for distance, and all three of those are Florida state records. His newest adventures in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he's one of many folks that we know in the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world. But we want to talk to him today because he's kind of a keto expert.
Yes, sir.
He's good friends with Dr. Jim here, and we're going to ask him some questions. So, hey, Danny, hey, what's up?
Welcome.
What's up, guys? I'm so excited for you guys, man. Podcasting is the best. You learn so much. It's the most, I tell people it's the most selfish thing that you can do because you learn so much every week. And I know others are learning from it. But, man, I've learned so much doing podcasting. Just it's opened up so many doors for me. So I'm really excited for you guys.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you. Thanks for spending some time with us this morning. And how's your day going so far? What have you been up to? I know you've been up pretty early, and you're on the road right now. So what are you up to?
So today, woke up at 4:30, did my 20 minutes of sauna with meditation, did my whole morning routine. I have a morning routine with my son that I do from 6:30 to 7:30 that includes, he cleans his room, we go for a walk around the block, we do a morning workout, we do our morning reading, our morning devotional. Then he cooks breakfast, and then I send him off to be with his mom. But I didn't do that today because I had to get an early lift in since I'm driving down to South Florida to go to a really cool place called Health Gains. That's a biohacking lab where they do a bunch of cool stuff. Yeah, so I'm driving there now, and it's really interesting because I'm going to be getting a procedure done called Gains Wave that I never had heard of. And my wife's cousin is the guy who runs the social media for this company. And he's been telling me, you need to come down, you need to check out what we got. And, I wasn't really listening much until I read Dave Asprey's latest book, which I absolutely love. And he mentioned this Gains Wave thing. And it's basically an erectile dysfunction treatment that a lot of people get. It's basically, when you think about with people with erectile dysfunction, they're trying to, buy pills to do these things. And it's not convenient to, if you have erectile dysfunction, to have to actually, time a pill or something. It's just a Band-Aid. So this procedure, what it does is increases blood flow. And, I was telling Jim before we got on the air that, I don't have erectile dysfunction, but just like some of the other people, some of the biohackers that have done this, Ben Greenfield is one of them, of course, Dave Asprey. No one has ever said, what, my erection's just too hard. I just don't, So I'm really excited about this because I'm just trying to open doors and help people to understand all the things they can do in life to not only improve their training and their nutrition, but like everything, like we just go through life mindlessly. And, when you get older, you lose blood flow down there for sure. I'll never forget, I had a conversation about 5-10 years ago with one of my wife's best friend's fathers. And he's like, it's not the same as it was 20 years ago. It's a whole different situation. And that stuck in my mind, so I'm just really excited to see what happens with this and how many people I can help to just try it out and look at it, just like everything else I do. Sometimes the things that I do don't lead to any results, and that's cool, but it's all about the search and this constant just journey to always try to improve my life in every aspect. So hopefully this is one of those things that can help some people.
Yeah, that's cool. I know that so many of the technologies that are used originally to handle erectile dysfunction, what they end up being used for is for muscle gain as
Right.
well, because of course it all comes back to vasodilation. And
Yes.
it's funny, we always talk about like the pre-workouts and how half the pre-workouts really want to vasodilate you, and then some of them are sitting there with 400 milligrams of caffeine and
Right.
vasoconstricting you like crazy. Like,
And
isn't this
you'll
kind of,
beam too.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, isn't this kind of back and forth where we're kind of doing the wrong thing? So it'll be interesting to see. You have to keep us posted on the results.
Is it laser driven, or do you know anything about it yet?
So what I think it's going to be is some sort of ultrasound, because you have to rub some stuff on your junk before, and then and that reminds me of what people, those gels that people put on for ultrasound. So I'm going to be in a room. Someone's going to take a wand and rub it on my junk for 20 minutes. And obviously, I was telling Mauda, my wife, I was telling her yesterday, like, this is really weird for me because, women have to go to the gyno like every 3 years and sit with their legs wide open and get their paps done. The last time someone inspected my junk was high school, and so for guys, it's kind of
Turn
weird.
your head
So
and cough.
yeah, exactly. So this is gonna be weird, but what you said about the caffeine, man, it's such a good point, because so many people are trying to figure out like what the best pre-workouts are, and they're always stimulants, and they're always things that get you like into this highly sympathetic, scatterbrained, non-focused state. And I've told people the things that I've been using for pre-workout lately, like lion's mane and alpha GPC and L-theanine. And if you look at all of those, they are, none of them are stimulant. They're all helping you focus better, and but they're not things that are going to bring you up. And I found my training so much better, along with some of the other cool stuff I'm doing, which you know about, Jim,
Yep.
because you've been doing it too. It's just so much better. My training's better. Most of the time I'll listen to audiobooks while I train, but the last couple of days, interestingly, I've just been really, I brought back out my meet day playlist, which is heavy stuff like heavy hip hop and some you know Rage Against the Machine type stuff, and that's been working really well. But for the most part, I'm always, when I'm training, I'm in just this focused zone where I'm not like just going crazy. But I felt like that lately. I think because of the carbs I've been doing pre-workout, I've just felt so strong, and it's just been really nice to have some of my rap back in my life, and I'm rapping my ass off while I'm training. So
Just getting after it.
yeah, man.
So I got a couple questions, I think, for our audience to kind of get an intro, since you're our first person who ever, can come on and everything there is to know about keto and carnivore and eating, nose to tail. So can you give our audience a little like intro on, just kind of briefly, on like the difference between keto and carnivore, and then a little intro on nose to tail eating?
Oh man, that's great. It's kind of a really nice progression, because, I started with paleo about 9, 10 years ago, and saw great results. I went away from it, and I started incorporating carbs when I was doing powerlifting, and it worked really well, but my inflammation was really high. I found keto in 2016, in June of 2016, and it totally changed everything, man. Just, inflammation went way down. My mental clarity was better. More important than anything, for the first time in my life, I had control over my appetite. Because in high school, I just ate so much, and I blew right past satiety so many times so that I could grow, and that, I'm sure, had lasting effects on me. And it was just so nice for keto to take away that just constant hanger and worry about the next meal. And then carnivore happened in August of 2017. I started looking into Amber O'Hearn stuff. She was the first person that got me into this carnivore stuff. And man, I just was like, I wasn't even trying, and I was shredding up more. I felt even better. And I always tell people that the difference between keto and carnivore, as far as my cravings, it was greater than the difference even between the standard diet and a ketogenic diet. It was just night and day. But there were things that I had issues with, like mainly cramping and electrolyte issues that were even more pronounced with carnivore, because just even more, I feel like it drove down insulin even more, and so I was even getting rid of fluids even more. And last summer, when I was first starting to really revolutionize and change my whole training style, thanks to Ben Pekulski. And we became training partners. I started to incorporate some carbs. I still was carb phobic pre-workout. I was like, I don't. It's hard to get over some of these things that are so ingrained in us. When you find something so cool like the ketogenic diet, and you automatically are like, carbs are bad. Carbs are going to kill me, and they're going to make me fat, and just and that can happen. But not if you're someone like me who has a lot of lean mass and trains hard, and doesn't really have any issues with my metabolic history is pretty flawless. I've been training for 25 years straight. And then my problem is that I'm always searching for new things, and that can complicate things, because I'm always like, okay, then now what am I supposed to do, and so I was like, the tail end of last year, I started to play with different things, bring some carbs back in, and I remember there were some months there that I think I almost lost my carnivore card. People were starting to make calls, and
With sweet
and
potatoes.
DC was, yeah, exactly. The carnivore authorities were starting to like look into my file, and see, maybe they should take this away from me. But then Paul Saladino came along. I started listening to Paul Saladino, and he just made me he just simplified it for me, man, where he eats nose to tail. And in his opinion, there's no need for carbs ever. And the guy trains hard. He does a lot of MMA and jujitsu and striking, and pretty intense activities. But for me personally, I still would hit a wall. And so, but let me just talk about this nose to tail before we go into the other carb stuff that I've been doing. So nose to tail for me really is just trying to, one, maximize your micronutrient status, because micronutrient deficiencies happen with every diet, and it's not just it happens over time, so it doesn't just happen right away. And we've been able to help treat things with our sons that we weren't able to treat before. Like my oldest had skin issues, eczema, and we started to incorporate liver. Whereas before I'd be like, liver, maybe once a week, and several weeks would go by that I wouldn't have it, or maybe fish once a week. Now I'm having organ meats pretty much every day, and salmon roe almost every day, pretty much every day, 4 or 5 days a week at least, and I just feel better, man. So nose to tail, period, whether you're doing paleo or keto or carnivore, even if you're eating carbs, it just makes a ton of sense to do it. And the other reason beyond maximizing my micronutrient status is just trying to eat in a way that's consistent with how we ate ancestrally. So there's lots of things that don't quite fit if you're eating a carnivore diet. When you think about it, like, back then people didn't go to the store and buy a bunch of muscle meat. They were eating the whole animal, and there's a bunch of different deficiencies and imbalances that can happen if you're just eating muscle meat. And so I've noticed that those have gone away ever since I started nose to tail.
There's a giant theory of what are called protomorphogens, and it's in a company called Standard Process. If you're familiar with them, they do almost everything that they have is whole food. And the idea is that a liver cell can have a specific property that a liver cell would need. So you like feeds like. If you have a liver disorder, you eat liver. And that's how we used to do it back in the day. And a gentleman named Royal Lee, who was a founder of this Standard Process company, he had even figured it out and saw them under the microscope. It's pretty cool.
So cool, yeah.
But that's
awesome. Hey, Danny, can you talk a little bit about the importance of salt on keto? Because like you mentioned, sometimes you feel fatigued or you hit a wall during your workout. And I know on top of that too, you were using salt as a pre-workout for vasodilation.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of the times, especially if you're not eating carbs, a lot of the times people are asking me, how do you get your pumps back? The first step is you got to get fat adapted, So for me, there was definitely a level of fat adaptation that occurred enough for me to get my glycogen stores back and to get my pumps back. At about 3 months, that's when I noticed that I was no longer looking like this, really lean, wiry guy with no pumps and no vascularity. And then, of course, incorporating salt has been massive for me, man. I try to get 10 grams a day of sodium, not just salt. So if you were to just only do salt, 2 teaspoons is not going to equal 10 grams of sodium because you got other trace minerals. So, I'll just pound real salt during my workouts, and my butter and my coffee is salted. I heavily salt my foods, and that seems to take care of a lot of it. I find that, at least for me, potassium is not something that if I add it or subtract it makes a huge difference. And if you look at the research, man, like the most important part is the first month. That there was 2 studies that were referenced in the ketogenic Bible about how the first 28 days you see a huge decrease in potassium, and or not in yeah in potassium and in sodium, but at the 28-day mark, it seems to resolve itself. So at the very least, the first month, you got to focus on those electrolytes. But if you're someone who trains hard all the time, you need to do it all the time. And I've had times I also supplement magnesium glycinate about 500 milligrams a day. And I've had times where I've ran out of magnesium and I've just been like, oh, I'll order that soon. Within 2 to 3 days, I start cramping again. So, and the other thing, I don't know if you guys want me to talk about this. I can go into detail. If not, don't worry. But it's also the type of salt that you have, because there's a lot of salts out there that can actually be very hormonally disruptive.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
actually
please do.
just going to ask you, so
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, so another thing that really revolutionized, the way I look at overall health and society in general, how we've become a very estrogenic society. Testosterone levels are plummeting over time. You can track them over, the last 80 years. Sperm counts are declining. Women are having a bunch of issues, not only fertility issues, but a bunch of stuff. And that's because of the xenoestrogens that are in our modern day diets and in our modern day routines. Like when you think about personal care products, fragrances, plastics, Tupperwares, there's so many things that have these xenoestrogens that our bodies just don't know how to process, like they would, a regular estrogen. And one of them, a big source, beyond things that you use every day, because when you use something every day, you're putting on that antiperspirant, you're putting on, those lotions with fragrance, and the colognes and the perfumes, and even the stuff like lavender. All those things are very estrogenic. And salt is another thing it's full of microplastics. So they did a study last year in China, and they looked at 21 different countries, and I think it was 36 salt companies, and 31 out of 36 of these companies had microplastics in them, their salt. And that's because salt, the way you extract salt, it's an ancient process. You just take it out of the salt water in the ocean, and our oceans are completely polluted with microplastics. We have several trash vortexes, the biggest one being the Pacific trash vortex. It's disgusting, it's massive, and soon we'll be able to see it from space. We haven't really been able to see it from space because the microplastics are so tiny, and they're all together. They tend to all come together because of the current, but they're under the surface, so they're floating just under the surface. But I've read some things recently that you'll be able to see them soon from space. And so real salt, yeah, it's insane. It's insane, man. And not only that, it's obviously affecting our food supply, which is, we're seeing infertility issues like never before. And a lot of this is because of this hormonally disruptive, these xenoestrogens. And so real salt, Redmond real salt is the one that I use, and it's real popular in the keto community now. And I'm not sure if everybody understands why it's so awesome, beyond the fact that it tastes really good, but it's because it's extracted from an ancient salt mine in Utah that was covered millions of years ago. And the top part is the volcanic ash that they sell as Redmond clay, which is great for your skin. And then of course the inside the mine, you go down underground, and we're probably going to go at the end of July or August. Me and Goody Beats, both of our families, are going to go visit the salt mine and see exactly what they do, man. They just basically, imagine taking, like, the amount of salt deposits they have down there it's massive. I don't even know if they'll ever run out. And all they do is take it off of the walls, and the only processing is crushing it into smaller grains. So I'm real confident about this salt, that this is something that I can have every single day and use it liberally and not worry about, killing my gonads,
It's kind of important.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, you were mentioning biohacking tips earlier, and sauna came up, and I know you're a fan of wearing the blue wave emitting glasses, and different supplements you've used through the years, like glycine to help with connective tissue repair. What are you currently doing, and what have you seen the most like bang for your buck over time?
Um, Gosh, you can break this into so many different categories, but I'll just start with my morning routine of every single day meditation in the sauna. I have a sunlight and saunas. I love it. It's a solo unit, so it's not even like a big. You walk in and sit down in the thing, and you basically lie down and crawl into it, and it's on the floor of my garage. And I find that it's really interesting because this is a really really hot sauna that cooks you from the inside. So I start to feel my heart rate go up, and at the same time I'm doing that, I'm trying to bring my heart rate down and breathing. And the other thing that I'll do is I take niacin about 2 to 3 days a week before the sauna. And that just really vasodilates me, and it just allows me to sweat even more. And so if there's something that I have that may be estrogenic or any type of impurities, sauna for detox is just fantastic. There's so many studies Anthony J has shared. I mentioned last year the reason why I started that was because I read Anthony J's book Estrogeneration, and he talks about how he mentions a few different studies with drug addicts, showing how they excrete all of these um, the metabolites of the drugs in their sweat. The other two reasons are cardiovascular and brain benefits that have been identified by a guy named Yuri Laukkanen. He's a Finnish researcher. He's a cardiologist and a PhD, and he's done some fantastic work looking at not only the first study was cardiovascular benefits, and they found that 20 minutes a day for 4 days a week minimum reduces the risk of cardiovascular events and even all cause mortality. So for people who don't know, that's basically everything that you could possibly die from is reduced. So you live longer. So that's a huge one. And combined with that is the aspect of the meditation. I found that my meditation is I'm so much more chill, man. It permeates every single part of my life, and I am not that way naturally, man, at all. I really am not. And I really love the person that I've become by incorporating these things, incorporating stoicism into my life, stoic practices of just knowing, being mindful of my perception, and knowing that it's important for me to accept the world as it is and not how I want it to be, to have the will to do the right thing every day and to do what I need to do every day without any regard for what the outcome is going to be, doing it because of the process, And so, stoicism has helped me a ton, and I do my daily stoic reading still every day. I mean, it's every morning. It's part of my routine. It's ingrained in my life. So having a morning routine is super important. And then if you look at supplements, where I've changed things up with supplements, my coffees in the morning. I'm still doing coffees on most days. I've tried to quit coffee like probably 600 times, and I'll do like one day where I don't have coffee, and then the next day, so I'll have bone broth instead. The next day I'll just be like, I want coffee, and it's weird. I don't know if it's the caffeine. It could be, but when I've not had coffee, I don't have caffeine withdrawals because I don't have that much caffeine to begin with because I'm a slow metabolizer of caffeine. With my genetics, it's very clear. Like a little bit of caffeine goes a long way with me. I also really, really love nicotine gum for my writing, and sometimes I'll even take a pre-workout. So that's another supplement that I've been using. There was a guy, so Hamilton, the guy who does, he's like this psychonaut that looks at every drug and he just explores these things. And he was on Tim Ferriss, and Tim Ferriss asked him, what are your favorite nootropics, and he was like, he started with like Ritalin, which I thought was hilarious. But this is a guy who looks at all these things, so he's like, if you want me to be real, Ritalin and nicotine gum, I've never done Ritalin. I did do the, the in college, the whole Adderall thing for papers and stuff, and that can be problematic. So I wouldn't recommend that one. But nicotine gum doesn't seem to have the same addictive properties of the smoking. I think you start to incorporate other things that are very addictive with the smoking. Not only that, but it has all the disgusting additives. Not to say that nicotine gum doesn't have additives, because any gum that you chew is gonna have even plastics. So that's where the sauna comes in when I chew my nicotine gum. Lion's mane, alpha GPC, and L-theanine. If I had to pick three things that I think are everybody should be having, I would recommend those things, because lion's mane increases NGF, which is neural growth factor, and lion's mane has been demonstrated to cause nerve growth, neurogenesis, which is something that not only back in the day was completely discounted. People thought once your nerves died, that was it. But you're starting to see things that increase BDNF, which is brain-derived neurotropic factor, and NGF, which is neural growth factor. All of these things are things that can keep our brain healthy over time. So you not only see immediate benefits from alpha GPC, which is a choline precursor. Choline is really important for brain health, and that's why I love my egg yolks. I also love L-theanine because it's very calming. It takes the edge off of the caffeine. L-theanine is another really, really cool product. And let me think, what other, beyond the whole incorporating liver every day and the salmon roe for the DHA, the newest thing that I've been playing with, and I had UCAN Superstarch in my pantry in 2016. I'm the type of guy who I see something, I'm like, oh, that's really cool. But then back then, it's really funny because back then I was like, but it's a carb. And I was like, and even though I saw the whole Peter Attia Introduction to Superstarch lecture, which I highly recommend if anybody wants
It's
to
a
know
good
about
one. Yeah.
superstarch. It is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it gives you energy systems. It gives you, the whole evolution of carbohydrate supplements. This is a product that can increase your glycogen stores and not stimulate insulin. And of course, the first thing it did was help kids with glucose storage disease, which these kids have to be fed every couple of hours, or they will die. And a lot of the time they do die young. So the owner, the guy who found this stuff, was a guy who had some money and whose son had the disease, and UCAN came from that. And I found, ever since it was just Tuesday of this week, I incorporated UCAN Superstarch, 21 grams of carbs, pre-workout, and I felt strong for the first time in the last 3 years. And I used to say, well, I don't feel strong because I'm not training for strength, but you should still feel strong, and I felt strong. And then I'm also incorporating 1 day a week of carbs, a real actual carb up of like 225 carbs, so right around my body weight in carbs. I dropped the fat that day. I've been doing that for the last 2 weeks, and I've just found that my muscles feel fuller. My workouts, I'm structuring my workouts the way we structure them now, because I'm doing the Keto Muscle Intelligence program, which should
Yeah, we
be
were going to
out
get in
in the
that.
next.
Yeah. I was
Oh
going to
yeah,
ask you
yeah.
about that here in a little bit.
Oh yeah, we could talk about that in a little bit, but yeah, it's basically the way the program works is early in the week you do more of a typical program that we think is optimal for ketogenic diets, which is 5 to 8 reps, 2 to 3 minutes rest. You're not in that glycolytic pathway. You're just training, and you're getting the most out of every set. So if you're not doing drop sets and if you're not doing high volume, what can you do to elicit that response? Well, you have to basically train in a way that every rep looks exactly the same and every rep is hard, and you make every rep hard. But how nice would it be to also be able to do that high volume stuff, because that targets a different type of hypertrophy. It can, trigger that sarcoplasmic hypertrophy that you see in bodybuilders, where they look big and round. And, that's not functional for strength, but at the same time, you're putting on muscle. So that's been working really well. And I think that's about it, man. I mean, there's so many things that I do. I'm trying to think of all the things that I do, but those are the main ones that I could think of.
Are you still wearing the nighttime glasses as well before bed?
Oh yeah, I can't forget that. So
That's made a
I,
big difference for you, right?
Yeah, ever since I started doing that like about a year and a half ago, and every single night, once the sun goes down, and actually since I quit my job last September, a lot of the time I'll wear them during the day when I'm in my room with the halogen lights and the freaking screen in my face all day, hoping to somehow minimize the environmental stressors and, I guess I don't want to call it toxins, but it might as well be, the things that are frying my brain, the screen time. That's been huge. I also do grounding, so I ground outside, but I also have a grounding pad in my office. So when I'm standing at my standing desk, my grounding pad is connected to the wall, and the conductive side is on top. So my feet, my bare feet are on that. I'm wearing my blue light blocking glasses at night. Another thing that I didn't mention was my sleep saga, because ever since I've had my aura ring, I track my HRV. My HRV is always through the roof, which is a very good indicator that I'm in a parasympathetic state. And my ketones and my blood sugar is always low, which is another good indicator. But I'm still trying to figure out the deep sleep thing, and I've done a million experiments with that. Right now I'm doing ketone esters at night, which is not having the effect that I would expect it to have. I'm actually waking up every single morning at 3:30, and it's crushing my REM sleep. But I feel rested, which is interesting. But when I'm in bed, I have another grounding pad, and I have the wristband. So I got my grounding pad in the bedroom with my wristband on, and I have a weighted blanket that I wear. I mean, it's
That's
kind of funny when you
crazy.
think about all the
You got
things I
everything,
do. Like,
man.
I don't know when that's where, this whole, we've had this conversation about carbs and stuff, and Robert Sykes, one of my best friends, he's on the other side of that. We don't agree on this, but he's very primal, and keep it simple, and I'm very much like, oh, I want to research and be on the cutting edge. But you can see based on what both of us do, how both of us can take that to extremes, and I worry sometimes that some of the things that I do, are these too extreme? Are they not helping me? Um, I would argue that a lot of this stuff is definitely helping me. I can guarantee that a lot of it is not hurting me. So um, just onward with that curiosity, and keep trying new stuff.
I think that's always fine to do. You play with different things, but eventually you have to figure out what your routine is.
Right.
I mean, if your routine consists of 27 different things before you fall asleep or whatever, it probably at a certain point becomes counterintuitive to continue to do that. But
Yep.
to sit there and find, okay, this really works the best for me, and to have two or three things. I mean, I have it in the morning, I have my morning routine, I have my nighttime routine, and you figure out what works. And it's always cool to find new and different things because we don't always know what the best is. And if I'm going to do something, I want to try to make sure it's the best, not just, oh, I know all these little things may work, but I want to do the couple top two or three that are
Right.
absolutely the best for me.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you got KetoCon coming up in a couple days here, right?
Yeah, man. We leave in 5 days. Gosh, that's crazy. But before that, to complicate things even more, I'm doing a 3-day fast with
Just gonna ask
real
you.
salt.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, dive
So
into
I've
that a
never
little
done.
bit.
So I've never done longer than a 42-hour fast. I've done like 4 or 5 of those, and the last one I did was when Robert and I went hunting, and we had the genius idea that we wouldn't eat until we killed something. So that meant the first night we were there, our dinner was Zevia. Uh, so that because we
The
didn't get
soda, the
anything, but
little like bubble water.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
jeez.
it's like, he had Zevia's, and that was our dinner, and we drank our Zevia dinner, and we went to bed, and that was that. But this 3-day fast is going to be very interesting for me because um, it's just, I've never done it this long. I don't plan on training except for right before I break my fast. If I feel good, those last couple of hours, I'll train right before I eat.
Do a Dominic
And then,
D'Agostino, maybe a one rep
yeah, do like
deadlift.
a high rep.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think he did 500 for 20 or something ridiculous like that.
yeah, that's
Um,
insane.
and then we fly to KetoCon. We get there on the 26th, Wednesday, and we'll have a big meetup. Goody Beats is doing a meetup, and then we have a meetup on the next day. We have two meetups the next day. I think one is the Real Salt, and one is Ali Miller's. And then we have another carnivore meetup on Saturday at a steakhouse. And I'll be talking on the main stage on Sunday morning on optimizing performance with keto. I had a cool presentation on, how to really personalize your ketogenic diet and make it work for you for people who've been doing it for a while, because I thought that was the best direction to go. And I did make that presentation at some local events that I did for the Adapt company, Dr. Westman's company here in Tampa. And then I did my nose to tail carnivore presentation on the low carb cruise. But I just find that what I'm doing now is too important not to talk about. And it's a real weird feeling, guys, to really just feel like I feel dirty talking about this stuff, because I know people are looking at me sideways. But I'm going to push through that discomfort, because I find that the information that I need to share is important, and a lot of it leads to people saying, "Well, you're no longer keto," or whatever it is that they want to say, or not. I don't care, because I think that when I have something to share that's important, if one or two people can gain something from it, and I'm confident it'll be more than that, but then it's worth it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that anybody should take their principles to this cultish like level where they're so closed-minded, I guess, would be the best word for it. So I really don't understand that mindset. Very few things that somebody could come at me and say, look, this is a different way. Would I be like, oh, no way, I'll never do what you're saying? I,
Right.
I just don't understand that closed-mindedness. And that's always a concern of mine. No matter what it is, I don't ever want to take it to that, I mean, bad term, but cult-like
Sure.
mentality. So
Yeah. Hey, Danny.
Yeah, I have
Yeah.
non-negotiables. I'll never be vegan.
I'm with you on that
Yeah.
one.
No doubt.
But to each their own, man. If that's what they want, then that's fine for them. But you're never going to convince me
Totally.
of that.
Yeah, totally.
So, can you share with our audience a little bit too? Because we do in our one of our first episodes, we talked a little bit about how parents can help, change the mindset of their kids at such a young age, instill principles. I look at you and Mauda as two of some of the best who have, you're raising two boys the right way. And, I just wrote down a few things like you guys are so consistent online with sharing how you've, been able to teach your boys, not just tell them what to do, but teach them the importance of nutrition, exercise, and mindset at such a young age. How did you guys, decide how to do it and together as parents?
So I think what has happened with Maura and me over the last 10 years of being together is like, first of all, I'm just grateful to have found someone who's on the same page with me on everything that's important. And every time we learned something new, we started to implement it, and it's been years and years of that. And so we started to just take for granted all the things that we do with our boys, until people started to say, "Oh, I really like that little tidbit that you just shared. Can you share more of that?" And we started to realize that all the things we're doing, we take them for granted, and we incorporate them into our lifestyle, and it's all just so it's all incorporated, and it's all building off of each other. And so we were like, let's share more of this. So it all goes together: the peaceful parenting, the unschooling that we do. If you just, for example, like you said, teaching them how to do things instead of making them do things. That goes in line with our whole learning philosophy. Our education philosophy, that learning is self motivated, and that everything in life works on incentives, and you need to help your child understand why it is that they're doing what they're doing, so that when you're no longer there, they are able to do that, and they know why they're doing it, and having that belief in that process leads to better compliance. So that goes for school stuff, learning stuff, as well as the nutrition and the mindset. So if we're talking about nutrition, again, part of our whole philosophy is helping our kids keep their autonomy, because we are autonomous beings, all of us, even our little children. They're not our property. They're humans just like us. They have the same physiology. They should be eating the same as us. Don't get me started on the children's menus. We're actually making a cool T-shirt where we're gonna make fun of these children's menus, and start a hashtag on ending kids menus. That would be an awesome thing if we had any impact on that, because it's laughable when you look at these kids menus, what they're being given for food, And Maura makes this point that kids are unwitting vegans, and the parents are like, our kids aren't vegans. Well, yeah, you may be offering them meat with the pasta and the bread and the cookies and the sugar, but they're not eating it. They're eating all this other crap. So when they leave that meat on your plate and you put it back in the Tupperware and you put it for the next day and then they don't eat it again, think about what percentage of your kid's diet is actually coming from plants and carbs and, grains and sugars. And then, of course, then they go to school and then they're like, you load them up with some cereal and some sugar and then you tell them to sit down. And that's just weird and bizarre. But like, everything we do is teaching them. So having conversations when it's appropriate, when there's a mistake, taking that as a learning opportunity. We try to really ask them, how did you fail today? Oh, you didn't, I didn't fail today. Nothing bad happened. Oh, darn it, man. Well, tomorrow you got another chance to do it tomorrow, because failing is good. Failing is learning. We always say winners don't lose, they learn. And having them kind of get rid of that fear of failing and that fear of not being perfect. And it's hard with little kids because little kids want to please their parents. So especially with my oldest, because my youngest is very defiant. And, if you tell him you did something bad, he's like, yeah, good. See? Yeah. You tell Desmond's like, oh my gosh, and so you got to be conscious of that, especially where, Desmond, when I first started eating a carnivore diet in August of 2017, and I was feeding my whole family steaks, Desmond was saying that he liked ribeye, but then he wouldn't eat it because I loved ribeye. And I'm like, Desmond, you don't really like ribeye, do you? And he's like, no, I don't. And so, things like that, you got to be conscious of, their desire to please you. And you got to tell them, look, you're not a bad person if you don't like what I like, you know? So mindset is really, really important. We try to always just tell them how to handle situations. Um, Always telling the boys that with Desmond, especially because he's older now, is really trying to get him to, as much as possible in life, just pause, man. Just take a second before you respond to whatever it is. Your brother screaming at you, not getting your way. Just take a second and pause and play that through a little bit in your mind. And obviously, 9 times out of 10, still, it's not happening. But that message is in there, and it's in their brain, and they're gonna continue to try, and I'm gonna continue to positively reinforce him when he does that. Like, for instance, this week he's been really good with his brother. He's been, one of the things we do in that morning routine is we establish our intentions for the day when we're going on our walk, and having those intentions early on in the day gives them a compass, and gives them something to be mindful about. So I always tell Desmond, if I tell him be mindful, it doesn't resonate as much as live on purpose. Do things, think before you do things. That's just what mindfulness is. So before you say something, just ask yourself, is this true? Is this necessary? And is this kind? It could be true and it might be necessary, but if you say it like a dick, excuse my language, it's not worth it, or it won't be true, or it won't be necessary. Like, yeah, you can say something, but is it really necessary? So it's lots and lots of engagement, just being engaged with them, man. And just if you're not homeschooling, that's awesome, but ask them what they're doing in school. And how was school? Good? No. What did you do? What did you learn? Oh, what was your favorite part of the day? What really got you excited today? What was the hardest part of the day? Where did you fail? Well, I didn't handle this well. How can you fix that next time? That's the gist of it.
Cool.
That's
and,
awesome,
and your
man.
boys are how old?
So Desmond is 8 and Dean just turned 5.
Yeah, just keep it up, man. My son just turned 16, and he's got a summer job now. He's working 40 hours a week through the summer. He did a lot of this on his own initiative. He's a really, really good kid, and I think that you're doing even way better than I did. But I think that some of those things that you said were some of the same things I really tried to do with both of my kids, and I think it's made all the difference. So just keep it up, man. It sounds great. Sounds like they're on the right path.
Thanks, man. We don't have it figured out, but we're trying, and we're definitely not perfect. Like, Dean has sensory processing disorder, and he had a 6-hour meltdown 2 days ago. It was brutal, man. Like, my wife had to leave the house to just get some sanity, and she came back and it was still going. So, and we don't react perfectly to everything, but we try to make sure that people understand that, and we try to share that. Like, last week my oldest set the recycling bin on fire, and that was in the middle of us recording a podcast. And I freaked the hell out because it was all being recorded, and I posted that on my story.
He just wanted to learn what would happen. It was a learning experience, right?
Yeah, it was. I told him because he set the recycling bin on fire, and after the original anger settled, and I saved my house and my cars and my kids from killing themselves with fire. I just had him clean up his mess, and then I told him, look, this was a very cheap lesson. The only thing you have to pay for this is you got to pay for the new recycling bin, which ended up being free, by the way. So I told him, look, that was free. So we're doing community service tomorrow instead. And just look, think about what could have happened. So taking that everything as a learning experience, I think is key.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So we got to. Where can we find you? I know you've got an Instagram, you have some websites. Tell us about where our listeners can find more about you.
So they can find out about DannyVega.ms. And I also have the, Danny Vega, aka Keto Counterculture Facebook page, which is my old Instagram handle. I have, fatfueled.family is our blog, and our podcast is on there. If you want to listen to the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, every single Google Play, all the Stitcher, all those. And then, of course, I'm on me right now, but I'll give it to you guys when we get off so that you have it. If you want to post it in the show notes. That's going to be massive program. So that's what we did on this program. It's massive. It's got video, training, diet, and a bunch of we're going to have a community that we're going to have. So super excited about that.
Cool. And then the muscle building intelligence program that you touched base on, that's something you have going on right now.
Yeah, man, that's huge. Like, we basically, first of all, and I also we have a page where people can, just for their email, they'll be able to get some documents that we've created. We've created several documents, free documents, on how to train to maximize, building muscle and burning fat on a ketogenic diet. You don't just train the way you used to train, unless you were training the way we think is in line with the ketogenic diet. We talk about managing stress. We talk about all the big questions that people ask with keto. What about my ketones? What about my, all the typical stuff like cholesterol and all those things. So it's an educational document. It's a 6-week program. There's a fat adaptation cardio program that I wrote. There's also the regular maintenance cardio program that I wrote. I wrote most of the educational document. Ben and I recorded training videos. Ben and I also recorded a bunch of frequently asked question videos when we go in depth into like what we talk about in the educational document, just to provide some extra, color around those things. So it's going to be massive, man. I'm super excited about this one.
Cool.
That's awesome. When does that come out, Danny? This weekend?
Yeah, any minute now, actually. I think someone bought the program, which surprised me. Because I didn't think it was launched. Like, Ben and I have been done forever, but we're copied on all the talk between the web people and the graphics people, like as they complete their tasks and as we get ready for this launch. And just super excited about it. It's going to come out in the next couple of days. I'm not trying to tell people a date because, there's always something. There's a new edit that has to happen. And
right.
I'm missing a call right now between all these people. And I just said, just update me, send me the recording of the call, listen to it after. So we're just waiting for them to finish, and then it'll be ready.
Cool, man. Well, best of luck with that. That's going to be awesome.
All right.
Thank you, man.
Well, listen, man, it's been awesome having you.
Yeah.
We appreciate it. We'll have to come back and do this again because I know that we touched on a lot of stuff and we could easily get into the absolute huge details on so many of these things. But yeah, this was great. So thank you so much. Drive safe. Enjoy the procedure today.
Yeah.
Well, don't enjoy it too much, but enjoy it at least a little
I
bit.
hope I don't enjoy it too much. That'll be embarrassing.
Right. All right, man. Well, thanks so much again for coming on with us, and we'll talk soon.
See you,
Thanks for
Danny.
having me.
See you, buddy.
See you, man.
Bye.